Welcome, everyone, to Congressman Alan Lowenthal's online forum on broadband affordability. Just a reminder that this event is scheduled to last approximately 90 minutes. Before I turn it over to Congressman Lowenthal, we would like to share a short video message from California Governor Gavin Newsom.
Hey everybody, it's Governor Gavin Newsom here. I just want to thank Congressman Lowenthal, first and foremost, for all the work you did to get the federal stimulus that allows for so much of what we'll talk about here today to have actually taken shape. I want to thank you as well for hosting this town hall. But in addition, Congressman, I think you'll appreciate, I also want to thank all the state legislators who led the effort to pass this historic broadband package here in California. We recognize that we can't have a growth strategy without an inclusion strategy. We don't just believe in abstract GDP without recognizing we can't leave communities behind. That was exposed in this last year at a scale the likes of which none of us could have ever hoped for or imagined as it relates to those that were left behind during this pandemic, that couldn't telework, that weren't able to download or even access coursework, be it those in public education, K through 14, but also those in higher education. We've been talking about this digital divide for decades. Heck, as long as I've been alive, we've been talking about this digital divide, but finally now we're doing something meaningful and at scale to address it. In partnership with the State Senate and the Assembly, with the tireless work of Senator Gonzalez and Assemblymember Aguiar Curry, we reached that historic agreement, $6 billion broadband package, $6 billion. No other governor can lay claim to kind of investment at that scale to achieve equitable access to high-speed broadband internet service. And by the way, to do it in a way, that's California, meaning to focus on that open access to state-owned middle-mile network, $3.25 billion to be exact, $2 billion to quickly deploy that last-mile broadband connection, and a part of the package that, frankly, doesn't get as much attention or hasn't earned as much attention but deserves it. It's at $750 million to assist local governments in deploying their public networks, those grant programs that will be critical to address the digital divide. Look, we're making historic, and I love saying this, historic, unprecedented investments in our broadband infrastructure. And we are committed to once and for all making the digital divide no longer part of our contemporary conversation. Our innovative economy, distinguishes itself around the world, but it means nothing if we are leaving folks behind and are not being inclusive as we continue to advance our efforts. So in closing, look, bottom line, there's no recovery, no real recovery from this pandemic on a state or federal level without addressing these infrastructure inequities. And so I just want to thank you all for coming here together and spending time on this virtual town hall to focus on the essential nature of the work we have in front of us. Program passing, as we say, is not problem solving. $6 billion, we got it done, but now the hard work begins. We look forward to the ideas, not just the ideals, that you'll be discussing here at this town hall. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Governor Newsom, for your efforts and for that thoughtful message. I look forward to our continued work together on many of the issues that face California. I want to take a moment to welcome everyone who is watching, and thank you for joining us this evening. Despite California being home to the largest technology and internet companies in the country, many Californians still lack broadband access. The digital divide affects households up and down California, from our rural communities to major cities like Long Beach. That divide is caused by many factors, from the relatively high cost of broadband that has made the service unaffordable for many in urban centers, to gaps in coverage, to gaps in infrastructure in certain areas like Central Long Beach and Avalon, which I represent also in my district. The pandemic has highlighted not just how critical broadband service is, but also just how profoundly broadband inequity is impacting the lives of people who don't have it. Low-income communities, frequently communities of color, have suffered the most, with impacts ranging from the loss of employment opportunities to challenges accessing remote learning to the inability to access telehealth services. The list of impacts goes on and on. We must recognize that the digital divide is not solely an issue of infrastructure, of cables in the ground, but also one of affordability, and for many, the lack of understanding on how to access an internet service. That's why I was proud to support the FCC emergency broadband benefit that was included in the American Rescue Plan, I think what the governor had mentioned, which passed the House of Representatives. This benefit provided a discount of up to $50 per month towards broadband services for eligible households. A household is eligible if their income is at or below 135% of the federal poverty level, or if they've had a substantial loss of income. If you participate in any one of the following programs, you are also eligible: SNAP, Medicaid, free and reduced price lunch, or if you've received a federal Pell Grant, all of those programs, if you are accessing, you are eligible to receive the emergency broadband benefit. You only need to meet one of these criteria to receive the benefits. And for more information and a full list of eligibility requirements, I'd like everyone to visit fcc.gov/broadband benefit. That's fcc.gov/broadband benefit. You know, the Congress has now been working on an infrastructure package, and the Senate has just passed out in a bipartisan way, a bipartisan infrastructure package, which now has moved through the Senate, and it includes $65 billion in broadband coverage and allocates $14 billion to extend the emergency broadband benefits. I'm also proud of the steps that California Senator Lena Gonzalez and our colleague, Assembly Member Cecilia Aguilar Curry have taken by introducing and passing out of the Senate the Broadband for All Act, SB 4, and out of the Assembly, the Internet for All Act, AB 14. I'm also pleased that Governor Newsom recently signed AB and SB 156, known as the Broadband Trailer Bill, to expand the state of California's broadband fiber optic infrastructure and to increase internet connectivity for families and businesses. With the passage of these bills, Californians will soon have the access they need to make basic services a reality. We cannot move forward with the technology of the past. Reliable, affordable broadband service should be available to everyone. The pandemic has shown us that the incredible opportunities that broadband can unlock, but has also made clear that we cannot leave anyone behind. Lastly, I want to thank those watching and listening who submitted questions for tonight's forum. I'd like to say we're going to get to all of them, but we tried to pick the questions that were most frequently asked by our audience. So these questions are the ones that had multiple people asking the same question. And to discuss the answers to your questions, those who are watching, from a federal, from a local, and from a community perspective, I am joined this evening by an amazing panel. First, I'm pleased to welcome California State Senator Lena Gonzalez, who represents the state's 33rd district. In addition to her work in the private sector, she served on the Long Beach City Council from 2014 to 2019, representing downtown Long Beach, including the Port of Long Beach. In this role, she led efforts in environmentalism, on workforce development, on housing, and on digital inclusion. Recently, I believe that the senator has been chosen to be the chairperson of a committee that I chaired for many years in the California State Senate. I believe it was the Transportation and Housing Committee, and I'm so pleased to see Long Beach continues in the legacy of providing great services for transportation. Next, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Juan Benitez, who is the president, recently appointed as the president, which is wonderful, of the Long Beach School Board. Dr. Benitez has over 20 years of experience in education, and he has helped, especially during this pandemic, to shape the future of the Long Beach Unified School District. Also joining us is Sunne Wright McPeak, who I worked with in the past, again, when I was in the state legislature, and Sunne was the Secretary of Business, Transportation, and Housing Agency. It was a great experience, and I learned a lot working with Sunne. Now she is currently the president and the CEO of the California Emerging Technology Fund, CETF, which is a statewide nonprofit foundation whose mission it is to close the digital divide by accelerating the deployment and adoption of broadband. I would also like to welcome Alfredo Velasco, who is the president and the CEO of the Greater Long Beach YMCA, an organization he has served since 2013. And I am sure during this pandemic, you have many things to share with us about broadband and the people who come to the Y for your services. Lastly, I'd like to welcome AJ Middleton from Human IT. AJ and his firm help to provide low-income individuals and nonprofits with refurbished computers and technology, low-cost internet service, and digital literacy training. All fascinating topics that I think we'll all touch upon this evening. Thanks to all of the panel for being here. But before we begin, I also just want to thank, this is not done by one person, and I want to thank my staff who has worked so hard to pull this together. My field representative, Clayton Hurd, and my press assistant, Emma Marone, for their hard work in making tonight's event possible. Now, let's get to the program. First, I want to give each of the panelists a few minutes to give some opening remarks, and then we'll spend the rest of the forum discussing and answering the questions that our audience has submitted. I'm going to turn now the event over to California State Senator Lena Gonzalez. Welcome, Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Congressman Lowenthal, and thank you so much for having me tonight, as well as our other distinguished panelists, friends that I've known, and of course, stakeholders that I've interfaced. I thank them all for being a part of the solution to finally closing the digital divide. And I think we're getting close. And with your efforts at the federal level, and with our efforts here down at home in California and in Long Beach, I think we're getting there. So it's a collaborative effort for all of us, where it's state, federal, local governments, as well as our nonprofits, all coming together to really do the good work that we need to finally do this. As we've known in California, unfortunately, to the Congressman's point, we have had the status quo. There have been decades upon decades of monopolies in our state, and decades upon decades of unfortunate circumstances where we've seen communities like Central Long Beach, like South Los Angeles, like Huntington Park that I represent, or even like Avalon, where the Congressman member represents, that have had such low adoption rates as low as 20% in some cases, where 70% have not had any access to the internet, or 30% or 50%. But all we know is that we're the 5th largest state in terms of an economy, and we still have so many people left behind. And so the digital redlining that has happened, unfortunately, the low-income communities, mostly communities of color that have been left behind and excluded, now need fast, reliable internet that is equitable. And that's what we're doing. SB 156 that I'll talk about later is a budget proposal led by the legislature and of course with our governor's signage a couple weeks ago in Central Valley, basically said we're investing $6 billion into digital inclusion efforts for all of California, whether you're in urban or rural California, middle mile, last mile, which we'll go into, all of that will be taken care of. And then SB 4, which is a bill that I am carrying, and parallel to that, AB 14, which is in the Assembly, will continue the efforts to ensure that we're maintaining, even after the $6 billion, which most of that is federal funding, after that is exhausted, that we still have a recurring fund to ensure that our upgrades to technological standards are met, and that we continue to invest in communities that need it the most. So with that, I want to thank you all for having me, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gonzalez. I will now turn it over to the school board, newly elected school board president, Dr. Juan Benitez. Welcome, Dr. Benitez.
Thank you for the invitation, Congressman, and for everything you're doing at the national level around our digital inclusion work, and to the speakers here that are advancing these efforts. So I want to give a little snapshot first to everyone about our district. LBUSD is the 4th largest district in California. We have 85 schools. We're the largest employer in the city with over 10,000 employees. We have almost 70,000 students. 2/3 of those students qualify for a reduced and free lunch program. 10,000 students are special education students. 87% of our students are students of color, and over 20% of our elementary school students are English language learners. So for our district, it was a massive pivot, to say the least, to fully go remote virtual for all students, literally from one week to another. And then in this last spring, to return to a hybrid model, where a little less than half of our students returned to in-person instruction, more than half remained with remote learning. And over this past summer, we just finished up our summer session where we had 15,000 students in person at schools. So with the anticipation to start this school year with as many students in person as is safely possible, we have a huge challenge ahead of us. Since the pandemic, our district has provided over 6,000 hotspots to families. We've also had many other thousands of hotspots donated. We have Human IT here who we've been working with very closely. Sustainability, though, is one of our biggest concerns. Most needs during the pandemic have been met using one-time funding sources. So clearly a more sustainable model is needed. Appreciate all the work that Senator Gonzalez is doing. And the Congressman mentioned internet for all, broadband for all. These are important policies given that for the hotspots that our district did distribute over the past 18 months, 81% of those hotspots went to economically disadvantaged families. So these are the families participating in the programs that the Congressman mentioned, SNAP, Medi-Cal, et cetera. We're talking about our foster youth, our homeless students, our English language learning students, our students on free and reduced lunch. In addition to hotspots, our district also passed out about 35,000 Chromebooks to students to support distance learning during the pandemic. But honestly, here, colleagues, I can say that this has not been enough, that we can and should do better, and we will do better for our most vulnerable students and families. We know that in the bigger picture, hotspots and Chromebooks are only a short-term solution, if that. And our biggest assets, after all, and I think all of us here would agree, are our students, families, and in the case of our district, our educators. Their resilience, really, in the midst of the challenges that our communities are facing, have been remarkable. And this has been the key for us to be able to keep pushing forward. Our challenge, our biggest challenge, is how we uphold our commitment to equity for our most vulnerable students, our special education students, our English learners, our low-income students, our students of color, that have already experienced pre-pandemic marginalization, exclusion, disengagement, and disenfranchisement. And so digital access has magnified this. So I'm encouraged by the conversation we're having here today, and I'm happy to share more thoughts once we get into the questions. So just proud to be here and glad to be able to learn and share some thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. I now turn it over to Sunne Wright McPeak. Sunne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Congressmember Lowenthal. When Emma contacted me and said you were doing the town hall, I was so excited to be included. I said, of course, anything for Alan. So as you might recall, Congressmember, when you and I were working on transportation projects now 16 years ago, I used to say, and some people thought I was crazy, that the best trip was a virtual trip, that broadband was a green strategy. I was pushing the integration of the technology, high-speed internet with transportation projects when you and I were trying to relieve congestion on the 405 and getting out of the port of Long Beach. So this has been a long time coming with so many folks that have been pioneers. It is great to be not only on this panel with you, but Senator Gonzalez, having had the opportunity to work with you on the city council, and you are a champion. We continue to work with Council Member Ranga and carrying out your vision for digital inclusion in Long Beach. I want to also acknowledge that for the California Emerging Technology Fund, we've been operating about 14 years. We've had the opportunity to work with the YMCA of Long Beach. And so being able to serve tonight our talk with Alfredo and just hold up the great example of the YMCA's Youth Institute. When Dr. Benitez talks about the need for sustainable solutions, we need to look at how our community-based organizations are part of that answer. For example, at the Y, they train the youth who are at risk to be digital media specialists. When we do a photo shoot, when we do a video, who do we hire? We hire the YMCA Youth Institute, the Change Agent Productions, and they do a fantastic job. We work with Human IT. That's who works in the Long Beach Unified School District. We invest in Long Beach Unified with our School to Home program in the 2 middle schools that we've started. One is Stevens, the other is Jackie Robinson. Those are sustainable solutions when we integrate technology into the ongoing programs that are going to be supported by government and by the private sector. So Congressmember, CETF was charged by the Public Utilities Commission to go close the digital divide in California. That is about as broad a mission as you can imagine. We had to look at the challenges throughout the largest state in the nation with the most diverse geography and geology, as well as the most diverse population. Long Beach has been a priority for us because of your local leadership and also the opportunity to show the way for the rest of the state. In California, with 13 million households, 2 million are digitally disadvantaged. With a population of 40 million, 6 million people are digitally disadvantaged. And too many people beyond that don't have adequate bandwidth. That's why Senator Gonzalez has led the way of a future-proofed network, why you at the federal level are making a huge investment in digital technology, internet infrastructure. It is a historic investment that the governor and legislature just approved with $6 billion. We in California want to get our fair share, by the way, of the federal dollars. So I'm going to leave you, Ellen, with that charge to go fight for us. And I'm going to put it in really clear numbers for you, because this is about affordability. And so for a decade, California Emerging Technology Fund has said, digital access is a 21st century civil right. It is a civil right that has to be addressed with not only the infrastructure, but inclusion. And remember the interrelated factors, forces that are causing so many people to be trapped in concentrated, persistent poverty is all rooted in systemic racism. And that has to be kept in mind as we do the investment in technology. The emergency broadband benefit program that was passed by Congress, congratulations, it's $13.2 billion for folks to get $50 a month. Today, as of Monday, the FCC posted their numbers across the nation. Only 4.4 million households have signed up. In California, it's less than 600,000 households and 2 million are digitally disadvantaged. Not one internet service provider has increased their advertising about EBB since you approved it. It is the California Emerging Technology Fund with our little pot of money who's out there doing advertising. So if there's any ISP listening, we want you to join us right now in advertising EBB. And the Senate just sent to you in the House the $65 billion investment in infrastructure. And there is a successor program called the Affordable Connectivity Program. It will now provide $30 a month. The point is that you at the federal level are making that longer term commitment to affordability. We here in California, Senator Gonzalez and all of my other colleagues, Dr. Benitez, we've got to get every family that qualifies to sign up, because we want the federal government not to be able to ever forget those of us in California who need to get online. Let me stop there. I just look forward to the conversation. Well, actually, I'm not going to stop there because I'm going to make a pitch. What you said, Alan, about Senate Bill 4 and AB 14. So Senator Gonzalez and Assembly Member Aguiar Curry with, I do want to call out Eduardo Garcia and Chair Miguel Santiago in the Assembly, are asking to authorize extended collections into the California Advanced Services Fund. That's going to be our guarantee long-term to have the dollars. It must get passed. I hope everyone will sign on to that. And then we have a bill that is going to provide funding for all residents in publicly subsidized housing. So right there in Long Beach, the Carmelitos housing complexes for families and seniors is a great example where literally 40% of the residents have no access to the internet and none of them have high-speed internet service. AB 1425 by Assembly Member Gibson will provide that funding, assuming the legislature passes Lena's bill. So we have a lot of work to do. A lot has happened. This is a great moment in time to have this conversation.
Well, thank you, Sunne. They were fascinating remarks. You know, I was struck by the fact that we passed this legislation, we passed providing funding, and it's not being utilized. It's not being accessed. And what are we going to do? And I'll ask them, we'll talk about that a little later about that. We saw the same thing with our rental assistance money that went out and evictions, that money, and for landlords, money to support landlords, that it's one thing to pass legislation. Maybe this goes back to what Dr. Benitez said. It's one thing to pass legislation, but we've got to implement that legislation also. And so let's talk about that. Let's move on to Alfredo Velasco. Alfredo is the president and CEO of the Greater Long Beach YMCA, an organization he's been with, as I pointed out, since 2013, and is already, others here have already commented, Alfredo, on what you do and your role that you have played with the digital divide. So I really welcome you, and I'm looking forward to hearing your remarks.
Well, thank you. We were talking a month ago, having a wonderful conversation, and here I find myself with this very esteemed panel. I'm here to learn just as much as those in the audience from this very esteemed group. And Sunne gives a lot of credit to the Y. The reality is, it's been an amazing partnership. We have learned as much from her, from CETF, and have been the beneficiary of their support and their leadership. And it really takes a partnership, which I think this panel illustrates that. It's a collaboration of community-minded organizations that really working together can make a difference. And I don't think if COVID taught us anything, our ability to connect, to collaborate, to partner, to find solutions in a common cause was no more evident than in this process than during COVID, when we had to come together as organizations. And we have worked very intricately throughout this process with the school district, with parent classes, with wraparound community programming. Sunne, of course, CETF has been a 14-year partner. I think since the beginning of CETF, we have been partnering. They have been supporting our work at the Youth Institute that she referenced. By the way, we have not only the Long Beach Youth Institute, we have a Youth Institute at Carmelitos, because we need to be in the most vulnerable communities of Long Beach. And Human IT, we work to get devices into the households of families that needed them. So we've really worked really collaboratively with each one of you. The YMCAs, there's 900 associations across the country. Who would have ever thought that we would have transitioned into childcare for essential workers? Why School Academy when school started? Because when school started, children needed to go somewhere. Parents had to work, essential workers, city workers, health industry workers. Where were their kids going to go? They were at the YMCA. We were signing them in, logging them into their devices, getting their passwords. We were instructors for them during school when school started for many kids, particularly kids that were vulnerable. And because of the support of organizations like CETF, the city of Long Beach, we had a lot of the digital funds to be able to provide those services in a very short time here. In addition to the Youth Institute that was mentioned earlier, we have a Change Agent production studio. We do videos, we do digital media arts. We have young people that actually are able to master these digital skills and take them from learning these skills to mastering them, to then figuring out ways to monetize them, because that's really what it's all about. It's about taking this opportunity to let them know that what they learn, their competencies, their abilities have value, and to take that to the next level. So again, I'll just close with just saying that I'm with a group of people that we work with. We work collaboratively, and I think what we have learned is our change capacity tolerance has increased during this last year and a half, and working together is more and more important.
Thank you, Alfredo. I now turn to AJ Middleton. AJ, your name has been mentioned a number of times already at Human IT, and I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for bringing this esteemed panel and your leadership in this area. And to, my other panelists, it's so great to see, some great partners out there, from Long Beach Unified to YMCA, CETF, Senator Gonzalez. I know we've been working together for a long time, and it's great to be here with you all. And thank you all for the work that you do in promoting broadband access here in Long Beach and across the state of California as well. Human IT, we are a nonprofit social enterprise located here out of Long Beach. We have the mission to bridge the digital divide. And really, we do that in two different ways. On one side of our organization, we work with businesses across the country as what we call an e-waste vendor. We take in all of their unwanted technology, one, to keep it out of landfills, and then two, to redistribute those devices back out into the community. So we work with schools, community-based organizations, nonprofits, to make that technology available to those who don't currently have access, and then pair that with wraparound resources, from assistance in getting connected to low-cost internet. We have a team that helps individual families navigate all of their different options, help them choose which option is best for them, and then actually follow through with getting connected to that option to ensure that they understand everything, that's a service that makes sense. And at the end of the day, the household is able to get connected to accomplish whatever it is that they need, whether it's attending school, it's just communicating with other family members, applying for jobs, looking for resources, whatever it is that people need. We want to be here to support them through that. Beyond that, we assist them in digital training to ensure that people not only have a device now, internet connection, but they also have the resources and the know-how on how to use it. That's just as important as getting the technology. With that, it's just a tool. You need that knowledge and that know-how to actually be able to accomplish whatever it is that you need. And then finally, the fourth area where we work is in technical support. With technology, things go wrong. It happens to me, it happens to everyone. We will have a team here that's ready to help support, whether it's troubleshooting, it's fixing, replacing a device. We want to ensure that the device that we're providing out in the community, or that the community members are now receiving, that they've received over the last couple of years, is in working condition and actually is available to be used, so they can attend school, they can apply for resources, whatever it is that they need. We want to provide that full wraparound service to ensure that people are not only getting connected with the device, the internet connection, they also have the know-how and the resources to be supported within that. And in closing, thank you again to the esteemed panel. I look forward to, the questions and, learning from the group as well. And, really jumping in to identify how we can continue to promote broadband access here in Long Beach and across California as well.
Thank you very much, AJ. And so let's get to the question and answer portion of the forum. In some cases, I'm going to direct questions to one or more of the panelists, but that doesn't mean the others, if you want to jump in, I welcome you jumping in. It's not, I'm just trying to figure out, I'm asking questions to one or two people, and then I want others to jump in and to do that if they want. So I'm going to, and in some ways, I'm going to pose questions to everybody on the panel, to do that. So let's get started. First question is kind of a very broad question, kind of a futuristic question. And I want you all to chime in. Maybe the senator could begin with, but I want everybody to, how would it impact the lives of the people in the 47th district, or if everyone had access in our district, everyone had access to affordable, quality broadband, how would it change our district if everybody had access to that?
Thank you, Congressmember. Great question. And even though it's a broad question, it's a question right now that is the question of the day as it pertains to broadband for all. And thinking about, again, places like downtown Long Beach, the Wilmore area and central Long Beach and Avalon, and places in my district like Huntington Park and South Los Angeles, where adoption rates are so low. And that could be either because A, they don't have the infrastructure, and this is where the state and the federal are coming in with those billions of dollars to provide the infrastructure and accessibility. And then the affordability piece comes in. They may not be adopting, they may have the infrastructure, but they may not be adopting because it's so expensive. And this is where CETF and Human IT and YMCA come in. So this is where we really collaborate. What it would do for our residents if we had universal broadband, and if everyone in Long Beach and in California had all the same access to broadband, meaning regardless of your zip code or your socioeconomic status, regardless of your race or ethnicity, you all had a reliable, fast internet. That would mean volumes for the opportunities available for telehealth services. We know that telehealth has now been, because of the pandemic, you talk to the children's clinic, Dr. Nicholas, where most of our underserved and Medi-Cal patients have been taking on digital appointments with their doctors, like we never imagined before. This would open up more opportunities for people that are monolingual Khmer speakers or Spanish speakers to be able to have access to their doctor and not feel afraid. And even if they don't have access to transportation, this would mean that the 2 girls in Salinas who we saw outside of the Taco Bell, that we would not have them outside of a Taco Bell, but that they would be in their own home studying and doing work in their own home with fast, reliable internet. And so that would mean the world to the opportunities and the educational, the upward mobility, the health equity would be just unmatched. And I would hope that as, again, the 5th largest economy that we call ourselves, that we can get to that point. This is just one start, getting the infrastructure piece and the affordability piece. But to get to universal broadband, I know that is being talked about at the federal level, $100 billion of investment that could be made. We could get there. And I know that it's a bipartisan effort that could be done. And we just really need to continue to work. And we could be the example in California. Thank you for the question.
I would add to what
anyone else want to jump in? Sunne.
Oh, I just want to say amen to everything that Senator Gonzalez just said, and say, here's what it would also do in Long Beach. It would actually grow the Long Beach gross domestic product by about 2% a year. The wages for the most disadvantaged would go up by about 6%. They would have access to better jobs. Senator Gonzalez just talked about telehealth. We have found by doing hearings and fact findings throughout the state that for individuals who have behavioral problems, mental health problems, who often have difficulty getting to the doctor to keep an appointment, when they were given the access, there was 100% show. There used to be a 30 to 40% no-show. So mental health is enabled by simply being able to have consultation online. And then I assure you, we would relieve traffic because people would avoid trips. It would make a huge amount of difference in the quality of life for everyone who lives in your district and in the city of Long Beach, and their opportunities would simply increase. If every student at Long Beach Unified School District was able to have, as Dr. Benitez said, we made the pivot. Long Beach Unified School District is not only the 4th largest, it's one of the best school districts. It's one of the largest populations and so many disadvantaged students. If every student had that device that actually was not only theirs to use, but we also taught the family, as we do with school to home. So they use the device to be able to do things such as find a job application and apply for a job online, or be able to renew a driver's license or a car registration without having to get in a car and go downtown or to the DMV. Huge changes that have quantifiable improvements to the economy, to the environment, and is certainly by definition to equity. Now, what I want to say is it's not going to happen by simply passing laws and money, although that is essential. It takes the YMCA, it takes human IT doing what you heard AJ and Alfredo talk about. There must be outreach in language, in culture, by trusted messengers. The school district is a very trusted messenger, but all of us have to hear about a certain product about 11 times before we decide to buy it. And so there has to be the repeated message in order to get the benefits used. That's the hard work yet to be done. The good news is we know it's effective. If we partner with everyone on this, in this conversation, and with the internet service providers, to get everyone signed up. You know, we pay AJ in grants, and AJ, you'll please tell everybody, is totally performance-based. If you don't get a household connected, I don't pay you. Similarly with the YMCA, right? And that works. That's a very strong incentive. In the last decade, our partners, our CBO partners, have gotten over 500,000 families that were unconnected, actually low-income families connected to the internet, and train more than 1 million people with digital literacy. But we have a long ways to go, and our investment with our community partners has to be significantly stepped up.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Congressman, just to build on Sunne's and the senator's remarks. So here's what I would say. I think it would revolutionize our public education system.
Totally.
A complete revolution in the way we think about education. And let me walk us through this scenario and build on what Sunne just shared. One of the things that we learned through this pandemic, we got a snapshot, a very brief snapshot of what challenges our students in home are facing. So let me give you an example of that. We had students in our district, in downtown Long Beach, in central Long Beach, on stairwells with their cameras off, trying to access their classroom. Let me repeat that. We had students on stairwells with their cameras off because they did not have a strong connection and could not access their educational classroom. So if we are to uphold and believe that education can still be our society's equalizer, great equalizer, then this is a must, an absolute must. Our biggest challenge as a school system was being able to literally connect our students with their classes, connect our students with their education, which all of us here would agree is one of the pillars to, however we define success, to success in our country. So again, this is a revolutionary opportunity in how we think of education, in what we do with access. AJ pointed to it, access is necessary and essential, but it's insufficient because we still have to navigate the portals, the platforms, the resources, the documents that we're providing this access to. So I think that that's the most fundamental part about it, that it was transform the way we think about education and really empower our communities through that transformation.
Thank you. I thought that was very. But I want to ask now the question that was asked the most by all of our folks and our listeners. And it was, my internet service, they said, are far too expensive. I can't afford it. I can't. And so what options exist? Maybe this is to Human IT and Alfredo, and maybe what options exist? And Sunne can jump into you too, to provide cheaper and reliable alternatives when we only have a small number of companies that control the market that are out there. Maybe these companies are out there. What are we going to do when people keep saying it's too expensive?
Yeah, from Human IT, I could jump in. From Human IT's perspective, we know that internet in the U.S. on average is a bill of $50 to $60 a month, which puts it out of reach for so many households and so many families, which leads to people accessing the internet via their smartphone, via a hotspot lending program run by their local library, or as Senator Gonzalez said, sitting outside of a Taco Bell or another location, or in the stairwell, trying to find an internet connection there. So there are some resources out there, such as the recently passed Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, which Human IT is taking part on in two different ways. One, providing a mobile hotspot, which is eligible for the discount, as well as the opportunity to use the discount for a computer afterwards as well. Or by our internet assistance team, helping people navigate all of their different options, from their Frontiers, their Spectrums, their AT&Ts, whatever's available in their house. Will help them navigate what those options are, help them choose what a resource that is best for them, is going to accomplish what they would want with it. And then we'll actually walk them through the entire process to get connected with that. Beyond the FCC's emergency broadband benefit, each of these providers do have the low-cost offers, which range from $10 to $25 a month, which again, Human IT is here to assist households in identifying if one of those is the best fit, walking them through the process from application to ensuring that they're qualified. We're really here to support people in identifying what their options are and helping them choose which option truly is best for them.
Anybody else? Yes, Alfredo.
Well, no, to piggyback on that, I mean, what we have seen is there's literally deserts in our communities where there is very little infrastructure, and even the infrastructure that it is does not provide enough adequate bandwidth. And even think of a household with 3 children that are school age. You've got a parent that needs to be access services to support their student. They've got 3 students that are in school, and they've got rent to pay, and they've got healthcare to worry about, and certainly a COVID situation. So having to make those choices is very, very difficult. What we've seen is the stairwell, the Taco Bell, they have the Y as well. And our teen center is obviously accessible to our young people, but what they are is really a conduit to the rest of the family. Our teen center became a parent center during the day when the teens are in school, because they're accessing our bandwidth, our Wi-Fi, and are connecting through the Y. And so whether it's Human IT, whether it's working with the school district, it's going to be working collaboratively to make the Wi-Fi accessible, but ultimately it has to be affordable, and we need the infrastructure where it's needed the most in those vulnerable communities.
And so the affordability issue is one that we have always focused on, Congressmember, because that's been the goal. Infrastructure is necessary, but not sufficient. And getting people online is the point of building any infrastructure. Certainly, when there's more competition, then there can be a price moderation. And I know that is the hope of the public investments that have been approved by the federal government and by the state. And we think that will work. And recall, there's going to be a ton of money put into, as Alfredo said, getting to the hardest to reach. That's the focus that we think should be policy and strategy from the federal government, from the state government. We need to drive to the hardest to reach. In California, that is rural, remote, and all of the tribal lands. California has 109 federally recognized tribes, and they are the farthest out. And California has more Native American residents than any other state. And the other hardest to reach are the pockets of poverty, of which we've got a lot right in your district, right in Long Beach, and throughout California. With $6 billion, and I hope our fair share out of the $65 billion is going to be at least another 6 or 7 that we're going to have to put into improving the infrastructure to that hardest to reach. That should allow moderation of prices, particularly in the urban core high poverty communities. With that, we think not only do you sustain the emergency broadband benefit program with its follow-on to be the affordable connectivity program, Lifeline at both the Universal Services Fund and here in California needs to be reformed and aligned into those affordability programs. And then we think, here's the other really important piece of affordability for the lowest income, most economically fragile and digitally disadvantaged residents, who are those who live in the publicly subsidized housing complexes, that for any internet service provider that is a vendor, that is providing services to the state of California or to any entity receiving state money, such as Long Beach Unified School District, that they must have an affordable offer that is within reach. We know, because we do more focus groups with more low-income people throughout the state than anybody else, that there will be the ability for a household to pay $15 a month. They even tell us they'll pay up to $20 a month. That's why AJ and Alfredo, the Y, can actually sign up households because they prioritize internet that they can afford when they know the value proposition. For folks who live in publicly subsidized housing, we just have to get them connected and allow that service to be free. That is what we do for the 5,600 housing complexes, the 1.5 million folks living in publicly subsidized housing in California. I think with the infrastructure investments and these strategies on affordability, that we can make the internet a lot more affordable. And once there is sufficient middle mile, fiber middle mile that's open access, there'll be more competition for last mile providers, be it wireline, wireless, and those choices will work for the consumer.
The last thing I'll say, Congressmember, and I building off of Sunne's point on promoting competition, is right on. And I think in the global context and what California is trying to do is promote competition and really break up these monopolies, because we have had large providers who have for many decades not invested in rural California or places like Central Long Beach or South Los Angeles. It hasn't provided a good return on investment for them. But what I say is we need a return on investment for our residents, our communities of color in these places, and all of our low-income communities up and down the state of California who have not seen fast, reliable internet. That means working with smaller internet service providers. They do exist. We often don't think that they do. And also providing an opportunity to empower local governments to provide municipal broadband. Rural California is already doing that. Places like Diamond Bar are already doing that. And the dollars set forth, the $6 billion that the governor has signed off on in SB4, AB14, also specify that we want to provide those opportunities for all. So there's market share for all of these entities to provide for low income community members, which we think will drive down rates and create more affordable opportunities.
And yes, Alfredo.
Just to build on that and about affordability and infrastructure, there also has to be, and I think it was talked about earlier by Dr. Benitez, there has to be some sustainable way to actually actualize technology in people's homes. A lot of these households don't have the competencies. So you need on the ground CBOs, it could be the Y, it could be other organizations that have the cultural competency, that are integrated in the community, that understand the neighborhoods, that have the trust, and that could come in and provide support. Even now, when people are signing up, when our community members are signing up for contracts, we're there to help them out to make sure that they're getting the best, because there's predatory opportunities out there and they need to get the best deal. They don't need to be making choices about rent or Wi-Fi. And so the last leg of that is on the ground support, I think, is required to help and support families.
Amen.
Great point.
Okay, anybody else? If not, I want to move on.
Dr. Benitez wants to weigh in, because I want to hear what.
Here's the magic wand. I'm gonna wave the magic wand, Sunne. 67% of our students, I said, are on free or reduced lunch. We already know they qualify income-wise. If we can wave a wand on the district and have us enroll, we know exactly where those students and those families are. We would need two things. Alfredo pointed to one. We need a trusted partner to help get the word out. Right? But we also need a private partner to make this happen, right? Because we can say, hey, we'll pre-enroll everyone. We still need the actual service to be delivered, right? But we know exactly, everyone knows here, where those students are, because we already pre-qualify them for free and reduced lunch. So if we could have the power on the district side to enroll, in this case, 59,000 students, we would just need, again, the engagement part and the pivotal implementation. Who's going to connect them, right? So there it is, Congressman. I think you heard the answer from all of us.
Yes, and you know, I want to follow up on that, Dr. Benitez, that I hear many of my constituents who wrote in said, you know, I'm just not aware of what resources are available. I don't know what's going. You know, I don't know where to do. I don't know what's available to a low-income person like myself. How do others, how are we, I think you've mentioned it, how you can be a partner, how we can begin to deal with that. Because, and I think Sunne mentioned it also earlier, when we passed the emergency broadband benefit program, only a small percentage of people so far have accessed that money. You know, how are we going to get the word out? I mean, it's one thing to develop this. You've already indicated how the school district could be a partner in that and doing that. Anybody else have ideas? Because it's great to pass all this legislation to do this, but how do we get to reach people's lives?
Congressman, I'm speaking to the choir here, but it's important for us to reiterate this. We just came off of our 10-year census count. Mm-hmm. The number one strategy that we used, Sunne, to those hardest to reach populations, the HCC, hard to reach communities, was trusted partners, right? Trusted messengers. That is an underutilized, huge asset right now in this, that when we needed to count our hardest to reach, hardest to count populations, we went straight to the community organizations that are trusted partners and trusted messengers. So if we could leverage that again in this way, because quite frankly, Congressman, the policy is good. You know, you talked about we can have a good policy, but how do we implement this? We have resources, we have programs, we have services, but it is cumbersome for our hardest to reach communities, our Khmer speaking communities, our Tagalog speaking communities, our Spanish speaking communities to navigate just to get access to the entry point there. So I think this is the huge opportunity here is the partnership and collaboration piece. We already have boots on the ground. How do we mobilize those boots, incentivize folks to connect them, right? In a way that's not cumbersome, because again, you have to show a form and this criteria and a requirement to qualify. We have a vehicle for that. We know where the lowest income automatic qualifiers are. We know who our trusted partners are. How do we mobilize and engage that in a way that operationalizes the intent behind the policy?
Anybody else want to jump in and answer, you know, about how do we reach people?
I want to underscore what Dr. Benitez just said, Ellen. First of all, Dr. Benitez, AJ and Larry Best, I want to take you up on, let's make your offer to get to every one of the students at Long Beach Unified that qualify for the free and reduced lunch. Within the constraints we have of EBB, let's just make a huge push. We've got some dollars. AJ has money from us. Let's put it together. We'll make that work. So we'll have a conversation, you know, immediately. Let's show that as an example. What also, though, Congressman, that I'm hearing Dr. Benitez say is, and you have the opportunity with the bill that's now in the House, is that if a school district is able to essentially enroll in the affordability program or register. In fact, with EBB, it's a registration process with the FCC. If the school district is able to be that agent that actually connects everybody and they get the notice of you are eligible for this program and now you can take your $50 or your $30 and go make a choice from these providers in your community, that works. I also want to just underscore that when we do outreach, it has to be with the trusted messenger, the CBO on the ground, just as you get to the hard to reach with the census. If you back that up as we do with advertising, and most of our advertising is actually TV, television ads in non-English with the community media. We sometimes call them the ethnic media. There should be a requirement that goes with any affordability plan, and you have that opportunity in Congress to require the ISPs to work with and the FCC those community media channels. That'll work, and I can even show you the data. When we put an ad out, our phones light up. We literally keep a 24/7 answering call center on contract. We're the only ones in the state that does it, that answer 24 hours in English and Spanish, and then hand off to AJ the referrals of those who qualify. Why should it be the California Emerging Technology Fund doing that alone in the state of California? That belongs actually with a public agency that has more resources.
Very good. Anybody else? If not, I'm going to move on to the next question. Dr. Benitez, I think you've already touched on this, but as you pointed out before, if it's worth saying, it's worth saying again and again. I think that's true. I'd like to know how effective you believe the school district was in providing online services during the pandemic, and what did you learn? What specifically did you learn about what worked and what didn't work in reaching your students once you went through this tremendous experiment where everyone went online? And you have tremendous amount of information to share with us.
Thank you for the question, Congressman, and I'll reiterate what many of us have already said, but I'll start with what we learned, because I think that's the building part for us. So we learned three things, or three areas, I should say, not three things, many things within each area. One is we learned that digital inclusion goes hand in hand with economic inclusion, with economic justice, language justice. So we have a lot of structural deficits in our systems. Our public education system wasn't set up to go from one day to another to all virtual. And so even though we love to talk a big hybrid game and digital game in education, quite frankly, we were not able to structurally be responsive. So our most vulnerable communities were the ones that most were impacted because of lack of, for instance, most of our families are still using a smartphone to access our portals, right? So many of our resources, our programming, our services are not mobile device friendly. So we learned that we had to shift that. You know, we're able to pass out 35,000 Chromebooks, as I stated earlier, but what if you have 3 or 4 children in the household, right? And what if they're sharing one hotspot? Then you can't all have the camera on at the same time. So we had to figure out a better way to have multiple modes of delivery, right? Multiple modes of connection. So that was another big learning for us. The language piece. So I'm giving you all an example. I'm sure all of you can appreciate this. We can direct families because we can call families and text families and email families to online websites and portals and webinars and tutorials. But guess what? All of those have to be language accessible as well, right? So we didn't have everything translated into Khmer, into Spanish. So I can get you to the link, but then all the background support, all the background information, the cells, the documents, we had to translate those things. So there was, again, a structural deficit there. So again, the bigger learning, again, falls into those areas, right? That if we talk about digital inclusion and digital literacy, there needs to be a lot of additional support that takes into account that education doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? Education is connected to housing. Many of our students did not have headphones and did not have a quiet place to study or even connect to their classroom. So if you have 3 students at home and a working parent and they're sharing the kitchen, guess what? That is not a learning friendly environment. And if you don't have any headphones and if you have a bad internet signal, then it just magnifies the issue. So again, all of these things go hand in hand in terms of the learning. Having said that, we are so proud of our educators, our students, and our families for the resilience that they demonstrated in, one, making sure first that the students' social and emotional learning stayed at the forefront, all right, given the trauma and the challenges that folks were facing at home throughout the pandemic. So building on that, I think, is important, that students are assets. They have knowledge. They are not empty vessels that we can draw from their knowledge of and their resilience. The second piece that we learned, all of us have alluded to it, particularly Alfredo and Sunne, that we have partners that are more than willing to mobilize and activate their networks and their resources. And I think in hindsight, we underutilized that, and we're building on the knowledge that, yes, we're all co-educators in this, and we talk about a village, rallying around children and students. We have an opportunity here with this coming school year to really maximize on partnerships, develop new ones, strengthen old ones, and think creatively around how we can leverage those partnerships. So again, that's an opportunity for us to build on. Thank you for the question, Congressman.
Anyone else want to? Yes, Alfredo. So
absolutely, school platforms, the ability to access virtually. And I would say that I'd even go in so far as to say that we learned that technology is a lifeline, can be a lifeline for families. Rental relief wasn't available if you can get online and access it. Think about that in vulnerable communities. Accessing healthcare, knowing where a testing site is. If your child might have COVID, now you can't go into a building unless you've made an appointment. When you got your vaccine or when you got tested, it was a long process. And you mentioned the language disparities. So, technology, food distributions, even to sign up for food distributions, in some cases, you had to sign up online and make an appointment. So the reality is that technology can be a lifeline. And it's more and more integral to every aspect of social life as we go forward. And so I think as partners, I think we just need to be as collaborative. I know that what we do with the school district, we will only build on it going forward, and be a part of the learning loss solutions that no doubt are very integral to broadband and access and affordability.
I would like to add, if I could, Congressman, the example in Long Beach with the YMCA and Long Beach Unified School District, and also the city. What has worked? At the time when Senator Gonzalez was on the council, and I already mentioned Council Member Uranga, Mayor Garcia, there has been a real commitment by the city. They have actual landing pages for anybody visiting the city website to find affordable offers. They've been distributing information. But then we back that up with what Alfredo and the YMCA did. I have to give a shout out to Bob Cabeza and Les Peters and Jonathan Gray, because a few years ago, they brought everybody together, including Long Beach Unified School District. Megan was then chair, the president, Dr. Benitez, and Sal Madrigal, who was actually at Stevens at the time, was the principal. Patrick O'Donnell, Assembly Member O'Donnell showed up, and we said, we're going to come together in a much more comprehensive way to build on the work of the Y and the work of the school district and the policy leadership of the city. Now that took the following form. We entered into literally a formal signed agreement for school to home and neighborhood transformation. The school district, the Y, the city, even Assembly Member O'Donnell immediately signed, the county of Los Angeles with CETF. We then committed dollars for CETF. This is a large amount, $400,000 to Long Beach Unified for 2 schools, to Stevens, where now Megan Trevor is the principal, and Sal Madrigal moved over to Jackie Robinson. Those 2 principals are extraordinary leaders. What we do with school to home is actually magnify what Long Beach Unified was already doing. It's a full immersion. You change the culture of the school to take a tool. Technology is only a tool. It's very powerful.